All right, first-time buyers, want to guide you guys through the process of writing an offer, subject clauses, completion dates, possession dates, when the bank draft is due. Also want to touch briefly on the rescission period, that 3-day cooling off period that was brought in by the NDP government. So getting started, we're first going to start with either a phone call or a Zoom. You can book one below in the description. We'll talk about your personal situation, what you're looking for, and I will set up a customized home search on my website so you'll be able to browse the listings. You'll also be notified via email when a listing populates that meets your criteria here. I'm going to put you in touch with one of my mortgage brokers to get your application started because pre-approval is key before you start looking at properties. Early stages, I find most buyers don't want to view properties right away. Usually from that first conversation, it's 2 or 3 months before they actually start going out and looking at properties. But feel free to browse the website, get a feel for the market, learn the different neighborhoods. When you do see a listing you like, I will book the appointment. I don't usually ask, like a lot of agents will want a buyer's agency agreement. I want to take some time. I don't want to lock you into anything because I want to make sure that we're going to be a good fit and that we're going to work well together. So let's say you've viewed now 5, 10 properties and you say, Jay, this is the one, I want to write an offer on it. First step, I will send you a CMA, what's called a Comparative Market Analysis. I will look at everything that's sold in the building or in the neighborhood recently, similar product, and I will advise you on an appropriate offer price. That doesn't mean you have to write it at that. You want to try a low ball, that's fine, but that will be my recommendation. From there, you'll sign a couple of disclosures. So disclosure of representation, which just states I'll be representing you in that particular transaction, and the privacy notice that just says I owe you a duty of confidentiality. That is fairly straightforward. It will be signed digitally. Then comes the offer. Typical offer I will have subject to finance, inspection, insurance, reviewing the satisfactory review of the strata documents. And in today's market, offers are usually below the asking price. The seller's probably going to counter. It usually goes back a couple of times, back and forth. Let's say now the offer gets accepted. You typically have 1 to 2 weeks to do your due diligence. If everything checks out, so your financing is approved, the inspection goes well, the strata docs are clean, I'll review and summarize them for you as well. I'll look for any red flags. You decide you want to remove subjects. So I will send you what's called a subject removal form. Once that's signed, the deal is firm. You're going to need a bank draft, which you're going to deliver to me, which would be, I typically advise at least 5% of the purchase price. That is held in trust by my brokerage, EXP. Keep in mind, a lot of first-time buyers get confused by this. This is not an addition to the purchase price. This is held in trust, and on completion, that forms part of the purchase price. So let's say 1 to 2 months after you have your completion date, then you have the possession date, which is when you get the keys. So if something doesn't check out now, so you're not happy with the inspection or you have unsatisfactory financing, you can simply walk away with no penalty. The deal collapses and you're on to the next. So that brings me to the rescission period. So what had happened when we were in crazy multiple offers and bidding wars, the NDP introduced this 3-day cooling off period, the rescission period. You can walk away during that time and pay 0.25% penalty. So let's call it $2,500 on $1 million property. That was meant to protect buyers during these intense bidding wars. But the reality is, by the time that was launched, the market had already cooled. Interest rates were going up. Bidding wars were basically gone. And so in today's market, nobody is going to use that. They choose, why would you? Why not just not remove subjects? Why trigger that rescission period and pay a penalty? It doesn't make any sense. And so it's basically redundant at this point. But how it was actually used wasn't by first-time buyers. It was investors gaming the system. I talked to my managing broker, Lawrence, about this, former managing broker over at R&B Brewing, talked to him at length about this. He told me this was never used by first-time buyers. It was being used by sophisticated, savvy investors to game the system. So they would put in 3 low ball offers, see which seller bites, and close on the best deal. Maybe it was a distressed seller. Then they would rescind on the other ones and pay a small penalty. So it was designed to help first-time buyers, but it actually benefited these, again, savvy investor clients. Moving on, what happens when these bidding wars return? And they will. 80% of the time, Vancouver is in a seller's market here, and buyers are going to start to think, prices are going up. I need to buy before I'm priced out. That's when you see this FOMO, fear of missing out. And it's not sustainable. Eventually, the market exhausts itself. It corrects or it trends sideways for a while. Where we are with the psychology today is it's completely flipped. There's no urgency. I'll just wait for prices to drop. I will wait for the bottom. The reality is you won't know the bottom, though, until prices are starting to rise again. Then you can say, yeah, that was the bottom. So I've seen this before in 2019, buyers waiting on the crash. In 2020, the crash never came. Prices surged. Then in 2021, everyone was saying, well, it's too expensive. I'll wait for the next correction. 2023, the market's softened now, but the sentiment has changed and people are still waiting. And some of these people, I've got thousands of them on my website. They've been waiting since 2019 and are still renting. And they probably will never buy a lot of them. They're going to end up becoming long-term renters. And that leads me to my next point, which is analysis paralysis. And I see this with they're smart people, but they tend to be the analytical type. CPAs, financial analysts, engineers. They get stuck in research mode and they can't seem to make a decision. And meanwhile, the prices continue to go up and they get left behind. And what I find is people that actually buy, often it's the ones that aren't glued to the mainstream media. They're not watching interest rates every day. They're not watching global news and CTV and the CBC. They just want to stop renting and start building equity. And in the long term, they know that it's way better off. They're going to be way better off. So, and I follow the Canadian economy, the immigration policy, interest rates. I have access to everything through this Paragon MLS system that you guys don't have access to, not unless you're a licensed realtor. It'll tell me months of inventory, sales to active listings ratio, all of these things. I see these trends months before you see them on the CBC or Global covers it. Final thoughts, conditions, policies, buyer psychology, it's always changing. It's always in a constant state of flux. If you're serious about buying your first home, want someone to walk you through it, book a call. Again, that's in the description below. You can also just give me a phone call. Let's make a plan. I'm Jay Coupar. Feel free to comment below or subscribe. See you in the next video.